Hello, I'm Victoria Burton and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Natural History Museum London. I'm presenting on our work using community mapped habitat data to estimate biodiversity across educational sites in England. So this is using a project called the National Education Nature Park. It's part of the Department of Education's Sustainability and Climate Change Strategy, a large project with many partners, as you can see on the screen, launched in October 2023, now with over 8,000 registrations all across England, as you can see on this map here. So it covers all the nursery schools and colleges right up to age 18 across England. And the programme goals are to empower every young person in England to take action to make a positive difference to both their own and nature's future. So it's got these four main aims: to increase biodiversity across the educational estate, to embed nature and climate at the heart of education, to foster meaningful connection to nature for all young people, and to develop green and digital skills within education. So why is this important? Well, the UK is one of the most nature-depleted countries on Earth, and the descriptive review argued that we have failed to engage with nature sustainably and calls on urgent transformation across all our systems, but particularly in education. And we know that the UK has a green skills shortage, and there is a demand for this is growing. And also that we know that nature connectedness has benefits for both people and nature. So it increases care for the environment, but also greater well-being for actually being within nature. So actually increasing connection to nature within schools and developing these green skills has lots of win-wins, both for biodiversity and for people. So how it actually works. So schools and colleges, nurseries set out by getting to know their space using digital tools developed with Esri UK, mapping their site using biodiversity surveys to get to know what's living in their site, and then identifying opportunities where maybe a bit grayer, places they're not really keen on, or where biodiversity could be improved, and then getting together, making decisions about their site, and then deciding where that could be, what they might want to change. And we provide guidance for this, and also the Department of Education has been providing grants for certain schools to improve their areas. And then they make the change happen, whether that's taking up some paving and putting in green areas, planting pollinator-friendly plants, planting trees in pots. Many different interventions have been put in. You can see case studies of that on our website. And then recording that change, so letting us know what those different changes have been, and recording those benefits that have made, maybe doing another biodiversity survey to see those changes that have been made on their site. And that hopefully will let us know the increase in biodiversity has been as a result of that. So some of the tools they've been using, the first step they do once they've made an account and logged in is to record their site outline. So this lets us know where their site is and how big it is. So far, at the time of recording, it's growing all the time. We've got 3,442 mapped. It's a screenshot there of the tool and with the area with many different sites mapped. And then the next step in their community science journey is the Habitat Mapper tool. So again, they need to log in and map the habitats. This is a bit more of an involved step. So far, we have got over 1,500 maps started. There's a tool, again, developed with Esri UK, where they can map different areas of habitat and lines and point habitats too. So there's an example of the tool here, where they've drawn different habitats. So we developed the habitat schema from the UKHab's and urban green factor. So there's 43 different habitat categories. As I say, it's done with areas of polygons and lines and point features. So they're also mapping features such as bird boxes, log piles and compost heaps. And to help them with this, we've developed a number of mapping resources, so flowcharts which step them through with yes or no answers to identify what habitats are on their sites, with a number of activities to help them identify things. So this is an example of help them to identify whether they've got playing fields or meadows, based around whether a certain sample area is mostly grass and flowers, or mostly other plants. And this one here is developed around helping them understand whether they have deciduous or evergreen trees, but also helping them engage with the trees. So they get to draw it, for example. So also engaging with nature along with learning about habitats. So here's one of our case studies. The King Alfred School, this is a secondary school in Highbridge in Somerset, mapped their habitat, and they found it really helpful in informing them what space they have to work with, and finding out what sites around the habitat might need. But they've also found it enjoyable. The students said it gave them some freedom to explore around the school, maybe in places they weren't usually allowed to go. And another one say they've seen it's allowed them to see where nature on the school needs a bit more help. Now this is an example of a completed map. So you can see blocks of colour here, the areas, so grass and wildflowers, and ground without plants such as the playgrounds, and point habitats such as single trees. We didn't ask them to map buildings, so we gained that data from audience survey building maps. So far we've had over 1,500 sites mapping at the time of recording, which have collected up all this data on. So we've got, as you might expect, a large amount of playing fields, over 7,000 kilometres squared, and similarly a large amount of playgrounds, these hard surfaces, but quite a good amount of woodland in total. This combines all the different types of woodland we've asked them to map. So over kilometres squared of woodland, and a reasonable amount of meadow and wildlife ponds, and an impressive amount of bird boxes and hedgehog houses too. So a good variety of habitats and things. And this is the first time that habitats on school grounds have been mapped in such England-wide detail. It's one of the least well known in terms of ecology and habitats. So quality assessment, obviously there's always a question over community collected data, especially with students and teachers. They obviously push for time, and they may not be able to check what all their students are doing within a classroom situation. And we do check each site boundary and verify ourselves. And if we're uncertain about things, we do check with the schools and contact with them to see if there's any problems that need resolving. We have some automatic checks for geometrically invalid habitat polygons, which we can check and edit. And we are developing a process to check with other quality issues with habitat mapping, such as if it looks like they've outlined an area of trees with lines instead of areas, for example, which would underestimate the amount of habitat on their site. And we are planning some on-ground verification as well, so going out to schools and confirming that sites have mapped. The accuracy is within acceptable parameters. So what have we got so far? So this is just a subset of schools that have got a reasonable coverage of their site mapped, over 80% of their area of their site boundary mapped. And so far, it's mostly primary and secondary schools that have done the most mapping. Relatively few nursery sites have completed their mapping, which you might expect. They're less kind of capacity for that. And other includes sites such as colleges and specialist educational sites. It's quite interesting to see. This is how green the sites are, so the kind of percentage of green habitats rather than playing fields. And they're not too different in terms of their means, but I was noticeably primary has got a much greater range of that green habitat than any of the other sites. We have primary schools which have got no green habitats at all, and then at the other end of the scale we've got some primary schools which are nearly all green site with very little buildings on their site or playing playgrounds. And secondary are much tighter, so we've got generally much more green habitat on those, and again with the others. So this is really preliminary data, still a lot more to do, hence I appreciate not being shared. So how do we go from habitats to biodiversity estimates? Well, we're using existing data from a big biodiversity database called the Predix database, which is held at the museum. I used a subset of European biodiversity. Unfortunately, there's too few within the UK itself. So I harmonised the data types. They're collected over quite broad habitats, such as primary vegetation, secondary vegetation, pasture, which needed a little bit of harmonisation between the habitat types we use for the nature park. And I chose to start off with to use species density as a metric because it's easy to scale with habitat area. I'm going to investigate using other metrics in the future. But of course, there are some habitats which aren't well represented in Predix, because it's quite, it's designed to look at broad habitats, such as things like green roofs and walls and ponds. It only looks at terrestrial habitats, so there's no freshwater habitats in there. So for now, I mostly used data from previous colleagues' work, Helen Phillips, who looked at biodiversity within the museum grounds, which she did a lot of literature research and meta-analysis on some habitats which are very relevant to the nature park. So I borrowed her coefficients from that work. I assumed biodiversity of 0 for a lot of the playgrounds, which is not entirely true. There will be some biodiversity there, but I think for now we can assume they're negligible. And so I use those coefficients multiplied by the area of habitats to estimate the biodiversity per site. So far for those more or less completed maps, here we've got these are the biodiversity per hectare for these different ones, and you can see again a huge variation between the different sites, and primarily probably related to that big variation in the amount of greenness on the site, showing a massive variation in the biodiversity there, and the secondary a lot more squat. So really early days, but starting to interesting to see the variation between those different phases of education there. And starting to look at some other patterns as well. This is biodiversity by the size of the site, again split by the phase of the education. And as you might expect, we've got this is actually by estimated species by site. So I rescaled it to look at how many species there might be per site. And you can see, as you'd expect, as the site's larger, you'd expect more species, but there's some interesting outliers there, which be interesting to look in more detail. And there are some different slopes between the different education. Still, this is really early work, and lots more to be done to look at the different patterns and to look at other different influences as well. But really interesting to see some of these early patterns coming out, and So what's next? So the habitat mapping is continuing, it's growing all the time, and also we want to start looking at that more rigorous quality assessment of those habitat maps that we've got, and refining the model. So I want to look at other metrics and other data that we can put in, so we have information on the socio-economics of a school, and of course there's the locations of a school and other things that we might put in, like the NDVI, the greenness of a school, lots of different things that we could investigate. And of course there's other biodiversity data that we can incorporate. It's quite crude at the moment, some of the data I've put in, the coefficients just from that one paper. There's probably other data sources out there that I can use and combine, especially more recent work. And also incorporating meta-analyses. So my colleague, other postdoc on the project, Alexa Vara, has been doing meta-analysis to support the project. She's actually speaking at the conference on 16th of December. So do go along to her talk and find out a little bit more of the work she's doing in the Nature Park. And so thank you for listening. Please, if you're involved with schools in any way, or you know schools, do encourage them to register to join and take in. But even if you're not, we have a newsletter to sign up to find out more about our work. We've not just habitat mapping, there's also biodiversity surveys and lots of other activities you can get involved in. Yeah, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the conference.